Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and today we're going to talk about when do ISTJs ever use their intuition? I wonder. That's an intuition joke right there. So I originally made a video called When Do ISTJs Act with Their Feelings? And that was surprisingly easy to film because it's like, we have tertiary feeling, so of course we'd use it a fair amount. However, this video is a little bit harder to think of examples for it because we are inferior intuitives, which means it's our fourth function. In the case of introverted intuition, it's so far down the camera can't even show where my hand is going. So I would say first and foremost, let me get one thing out of the way. When I talk about when do ISTJs use their intuition, it's going to be extroverted intuition. So don't expect ISTJs to use introverted intuition at all, in the slightest, out of the question, goodbye, the end. Because when they try, they will get annoyed and frustrated and maybe even experience physical pain. Is that what ISTPs feel like when they try to show emotion? So, first of all, what is the difference between extroverted and introverted intuition? Well, taken as a function by itself, extroverted intuition is more or less the excitement at new possibilities. So, for example, if Nintendo announces a brand new game that's not from an existing IP, the extroverted intuitions are going to be like, oh my gosh, that's so new! Let's imagine all the great possibilities of where this could go. Introverted intuition can be kind of similar, but considering that's my eighth function, work with me here while I try to describe it. Introverted intuition is more along the lines of looking deeper at the ultimate meaning, looking beneath the surface and trying to find the big picture, whatever that means, of how life works. So introverted intuitives have a tendency to always think ahead and create this super detailed plan of how they want to go through life. Whereas extroverted intuition is more or less like they get easily distracted and they find other things to find fun with. So ISTJs having extroverted intuition as their fourth function are obviously not going to put a whole lot of priority on it, whereas the ENFPs and the ENTPs will be rejoicing when a new idea comes, and a lot of times they'll be the types that says, oh, this is getting stale. ISTJs, on the other hand, will say, oh no, not another new idea, this will create a disaster, and why can't everything just stay the same? I guess you could say the Pokemon Company and Game Freak are ISTJs because the Pokemon series hasn't really evolved at all. Which is ironic because the Pokemon in the games evolve, but the game series hasn't evolved with them, so they're defeating their own design philosophy. Like Pokemon Sword and Shield still play very similar to the ones on the Game Boy. And I personally think that that's a bit overkill, but who knows? I'm just making a stupid comparison here. The point is that ISTJs generally see using extroverted intuition as more or less a way of pessimistically viewing the future. And as a result, they don't really like to plan for the future unless they have a firm groundwork in a factual basis. So to give an example, an ENFP might say, I want to travel to France. That sounds so much fun. I want to eat all the delicious food. I want to go on a plane. I want to go and explore the world. Whereas an ISTJ is going to be a lot more reserved. And they'd probably say, if we must go to France, then first let me see some Google images so that I know the layout of the country. Then let me know exactly how long the plane ride lasts so I have enough comfort to last me during the trip. Then I'll have to know what the menus are, and then I'd also like to know what France's culture is, study up on the do's and don'ts of the culture, figure out if perhaps their bathroom system is different, and so that I can arrange my schedule and figure out my day-to-day agenda, and assuming they've thought this far at all, they'll probably realize, too much effort, I'm out of here. So rather than having that drive for exploration, ISTJs are probably just going to just say, forget it. And while it is true that ISTJs like to plan everything out, they don't like to plan for the unknown future. They like to plan for the foreseeable future. So whereas, say, an ENFP might be planning for their wedding ever since they were 5, ISTJs won't plan for their wedding until they're actually, engaged. So, big difference there. However, I would say that when ISTJs are brave enough to use their intuition in a healthy, non-pessimistic way, for my personal experience, I've seen myself using my intuition primarily for my humor, but also in being okay with being more easygoing. So I might use my humor to come up with these super, most people say they're awful, jokes that are usually like very outlandish, out of nowhere type of silliness that seems kind of like, huh? ISTJs are capable of actually not taking life seriously all the time? An example of my humor might be like if my sister's walking up the stairs and I'll start going, my sister is here, let us throw confetti into the air and celebrate her grand arrival. She's like, I just walked up the stairs, big whoop. So it's just that silly, wacky, doesn't really have a basis in anything type of humor. It also leads to ISTJs occasionally having a little bit of a performer side to them and being okay with stuff like skits and entertaining people at a party if they're in their element. The other way I would see myself using my intuition is if my friends are suggesting something that is either unfamiliar or based on something that happened in the past that frightened me or made me uncomfortable, and me getting more willing to just say like, okay, I don't exactly know what's happening here, but I guess I'll give it a try. I might have to take baby steps. I might have to like have a little bit at a time. But over the years, I've gotten better at adjusting to new things. When I used to go to young adult group, I would always yell at people who sat in my chair. Nowadays, I'll be like, okay, well, I guess you can sit in my chair. I would have preferred the pattern, but I suppose I can sit somewhere else. So it's more of just that resignation that change has to happen. I'm like, oh my gosh, as much as I hate change, it's a part of life. So, I mean, we as humans change. Like, it's not like I popped out of my mother's womb looking like this. Obviously, a lot of my body, my voice, even my thought process has changed so that I could get to this point. So if we can't deal with that kind of change, we need to realize that other changes happen in the world itself. You know, people die, people evolve, even the earth is eventually going to decay and wither away, and we just have to get used to it. But I would also think that extroverted intuition, if I were to be even healthier than I already am, would enable me to be more willing to not always be consistent and to do something that's wildly original. Like if I were to just all of a sudden pick up an Xbox controller and play the super wild indie game that's very surreal and doesn't really have a whole lot of things explained, now that would be really pushing it. I'm not saying we couldn't do that, but we'd probably be grumbling and complaining and like, oh my gosh, why can't they just give a straight answer? Movies like 2001 are the antithesis of the ISTJ's enjoyment because you've got that black monolith that just kind of appears, and the ISTJ's like, okay, why is the black monolith here? What does it do? Does it have special powers? Why does the guy just look at it? Like, is it giving him candy or something? What the heck is going on? It generally makes them have more questions than answers. So cycling back to the beginning of the video in typical intuitive fashion, you might be wondering, okay, Paul, you're talking about extroverted intuition here, but what about introverted intuition? What do you have against that? Well, that's our 8th function. And so as a result, basically the way INFJs and INTJs think is, well, it's more or less impossible for an ISTJ to do that because they're so grounded in reality. And I would dare say if an ISTJ tried to use introverted intuition, then they would likely fall back on their introverted sensing and extroverted thinking as a way of explaining it, which INTJs and INFJs don't do. They purely rely on their intuition by itself without falling back on sensing. So whereas they can have this perfectly detailed plan of 20 years from now in the future and be able to figure out every single loose end, and if X happens or if B happens, they'll have a backup plan for all of that. ISTJs will say, well, 20 years from now I might be dead by then, so, and then the INFJs and INTJs may be like, oh, you're telling me you haven't planned out your retirement yet? Why would I plan for my retirement yet? I might not even be able to be retired. What if I don't make enough money for that? At the moment, I don't need to think about that. I may be old, but I'm not that old, guys. And overall, I would say that if you were to put an ISTJ into a situation where he's or she is a little bit more easygoing, and they're like, okay, I'm going to try really hard to use my introverted intuition. So an example of this when I tried was I went to a philosophy meeting, and they were discussing a whole bunch of intuitive-y stuff that we sensors can't stand. They were talking about like why does 1 + 1 = 2. They were also talking about, I guess, like how did math exist? And I'm just like, okay, why is this relevant? Like, if 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, who cares? Like, do we really have to have these panic attacks over everything? And, well, let's just say I wasn't exactly very popular after that day. But I was, like, legitimately getting a headache. Like, the more they talked, the more I was physically feeling sick. And I think at one point I actually had to remove myself from the group. And while a lot of times I'm normally very calm and composed, usually when people use their intuition too much, it leads to me like just losing that composure and becoming like full on offensive mode. Like the other day, I decided, you know what, I shouldn't be afraid of my intuition. Let's ask an intuitive question. So I said, why do politics exist? Oh man, my two friends started talking, and I was pretending like my iced tea was a drink the whole time because I was like, what are you guys even talking about? What does that have to do with my question? And then I just said, you know what? Just forget I asked. I'm going to change the topic, all right? You guys are giving me too much of a headache. Why do you have to be so confusing? So you could say that it actually leads to ISTJs being more or less hostile, and I wouldn't say it's really possible for them to control it, because even if they tried to control it, I would imagine their body language would be somewhere along the lines of, yeah, I totally understand. And then like putting on this super duper fake cheesy smile and like just overall just looking really miserable. And I would just say don't put ISTJs into that situation. Instead, it's good to encourage them to use their inferior function, just like it's good for, say, an ESTJ to learn that it's okay to express their emotions. It's okay for an INFJ to realize that, oh, there's a table in front of me, I should notice it. It's okay for an ENFP to learn that facts and remembering things are not the devil's play tool. So you may be wondering, well, what if I know someone who's an ISTJ who refuses to use this extroverted intuition? Well, I'm not really sure how to answer that, but I would say demos are probably the best thing to do. Like, if someone really wants me to try something, generally speaking, if it's free and it doesn't have any additional costs, or if it has benefits, are what will cause me to like something. So for example, there's this game that came out on the Switch called Control, and people are saying like, oh, Control, that was on the other systems and it was a masterpiece. I was like, what is this? What the heck? What if it's a disaster of a game? And then there was a free demo on the eShop, so I said, it's free. Okay, I'll give it a try. And I didn't lose anything from it. Or when my best friend wants me to try a game, I'll be like, okay, how about this? You and the others play it first, and I'll observe. That way I don't have to hurt my head trying to figure out the game. And then if I like it, then I'll try it. So in other words, if you can give the ISTJ a harmless preview, or even better, if you can research the statistics and give them a full factual chart of how much of a risk factor they'll have, maybe cite Metacritic if you want them to try a new game, saying, look at all the great ratings this game had. Or show them a reviewer that is also an ISTJ and say, see, this person didn't like the abstract story, but they found this part appealing, and then relate it to something that they like. So say, now, I know that you really like Breath of the Wild, so this game has a lot of exploration akin to that. Also, this game is very open-ended, just like what you like about Breath of the Wild. Even better, not only relate it to something familiar, but relate it to something phenomenal to the ISTJ personally. So maybe go along the lines of, hey, Paul, remember that mission trip when you ate the Eucharist and you all of a sudden had this whole new view of people? Well, let me tell you, this will remind you of that. Or heck, for that matter, if you want them to try Minecraft, you could say, hey, you want to see my perfect recreation of the retreat center that you guys stayed at. Oh, the ISTJ is going to be fascinated. So, yeah, you have to appeal to that introverted sensing. That's really annoying. So, thank you very much for all of you watching this. I really hope that even if you take your sweet time responding to this video, that you'll still give the best comment ever, because you are very focused on quality over being quick. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching. If I missed out anything, please let me know in the comments section. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, Nintendo, please give us a good IP that we love, instead of trying to bolster a bunch of crazy theoretical nonsense on us. Bye!